Okay, so I want to talk about something. So you got something important going on your phone right now, Mike. What do you got going on?
Well, my son is playing in a baseball game. They're not doing very well, but he did well individually, which is all I really care about. Is just
no,
yeah,
I get.
But the game's over, so the phone is turning down.
Okay,
you've got my 100% focus.
Yeah, and so I want to talk about that.
Okay.
So, when you and I we're about the same age, I quit playing baseball in high school. You kept playing, right? It's always been kind of something, but. I mean, this type of technology, how do you feel about the changes to youth baseball, like what it is today versus what it is that we grew up with?
That's a good question. I mean, youth baseball, just like any youth sport now, is it's more of a job. I mean, it's a commitment. Everything is scheduled. There's private instruction. If you are not doing instruction or not going to practice, it's easy to be looked at as you're not really interested in the sport. Which is unfortunate because when we were growing up and playing youth sports, it was just for fun, and you played a lot in free time, and that's how you got better.
Yeah.
And now, baseball primarily, but all of them are the same. That you don't have free time because you're just going from one sport to the next sport to the next sport.
Yeah.
Which is too bad. I mean, I wish it was a little bit more of how it was when we grew up, that you had free time to just be a kid.
Yeah.
And in that free time, kids chose to be able to go out and do those types of things on their own, pick up games, one-on-one on basketball, go out there, throw the ball around.
Do a lot of these kids like they play baseball only, or are they playing baseball and soccer?
They should be playing a lot of them. The teams that I run, they're multi-sport athletes, which is what I like.
Oh, okay.
But they do feel the pressure from mom and dad. Hey, you got to pick one. I can't tell you how many times I get questions from parents saying, hey, we're 12 years old, so we need to be picking, are we all in on baseball, and when do you need to know that? And I'm like, you just need to relax. We're 12 years old.
Yeah.
We're kids. I want them playing baseball, but they should be playing basketball and football and soccer and whatever else they want to play. They don't need to be doing anything year-round because they're going to get injured and they're going to lose interest in the sport when they get physically big enough to make a difference in the sport, but they will never realize that because they're going to want to get out of the sport because it's no longer fun for them.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, because when I was a kid, it was like, you did baseball, and then we also did soccer, and we also did golf.
Yeah, it should be
it was like a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a number of friends of mine that have kids that play competitively, and what's the app? Is Game Changer?
Game Changer.
Yeah, so I was at my buddy Brian. I was at his kid's game, and he was running Game Changer. And I think he had a kid playing on another field as well. And he was like, hey, I need to run over here real quick. Can you understand how this operates? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And then just like,
was he the guy in charge of?
Yeah, I completely spaced like
putting
half
the
an
data
inning.
in?
Like they're changing up, and he's walking back, and he's like, why does it only say one out? And it's, that's not my kid. I mean,
we get parents.
It was on you for giving it to me.
Yeah, your fault. Yeah, we have parents. We'll have someone will do it primarily, and they're good at it. Sometimes someone will cover for them, and parents will get upset saying, that was not a hit. That was an error. My son's a pitcher. Can you go back and change it? I'm like, hold on. We're 12 you. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but
does that stuff matter, ultimately? Are people going to be, no scout is going to be like, oh, when you were 12 years old, you did this in a game, right?
High school coaches couldn't care less what team you played for or how well you did on that team. All they care is what you look like when you show up to try out for their team.
So I wonder if that's because their parents are judged in a certain way, in their jobs, right? With KPIs and stuff like that, right? So it kind of feeds into, the sport at that point.
Yeah, I mean, everything's a KPI now. But the thing so you're saying that even with all the stats and the metrics, as a kid, junior high or whatever, that when they get to the high school team, that data, that information doesn't matter.
No, that high school coach will never look at Game Changer for youth baseball.
Okay.
They either know about the player already because they're a stud, or they'll learn about the player at tryouts. And if they're good enough, they'll make the team. And if they're not, then they won't.
Okay. And again, my kids, none of them were they played baseball and then they quit. None of them were really passionate about it. So I just do this vicariously through other parents. If you're on a track to be a pro baseball player, it goes through high school like that. I mean, that is the high school feeds, or are there club teams?
You're going to get recognized more in the club team level, because if you're good enough, then you get invited to these showcase tournaments. Showcase tournaments, you'll get picked up by these national clubs, and national clubs will put you in higher level showcase tournaments, which is where all the college and pro scouts are.
Okay.
High school anymore is just more for school pride. Most of the time you're spent in the off season, and in the late spring all the way through summer is all club baseball.
Yeah.
Which is too bad, because high school, the pride factor, not a lot of kids are playing
Right.
ball like they used to in high school.
Right. So I'll go to watch Brian's boys play. I always have a good time. It's interesting, but I never had a job where I had to like flip burgers or like do yard work or anything like that. My dad had me officiating youth sports from like the time I was 14, and I did that. I was living in Kansas City and I was still picking up games, doing things. And so, for me at 14 years old, I was like ejecting like coaches and business leaders in Springfield out of these games. I mean, what do you think? How do you feel about the parenting and kind of their involvement, in the game today?
For the most part, most are pretty cool.
Yeah.
But you'll get some that are coaches too. Coaches are worse than parents.
Yeah.
Parents they're anxious because they want their kid to do well.
Yeah.
And they feel the pressure that when they don't do well, they think that that's a reflection on them. And so then their actions will demonstrate how they think and feel about that insecurity. Coaches, I think, are too competitive on winning rather than developing, and they will take it out on an example like what you referenced. They'll take it out on an umpire who might be 14 or 17 years old, which is unfair because really it doesn't really matter. That's part of the game.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I feel like that was one of the best things that my dad could have done. I don't know if he did it like intentionally when he was like, "Hey, you're going to do this."
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, I mean, I've been yelled at my entire career over.
Were you one and done? Like someone would yell something and be like, "All right, that's it." You're out.
No. I learned really quickly that it was, and it's not unlike what we do with realtors and our clients, that like I sort of have to manage the emotions of the situation. Right. And but it would, there would be plenty of times that there'd be like straight up some sort of chaos in the other umpire, and I learned. I enjoyed that chaos, and so I mean I wouldn't invite it, but like that was my opportunity, to really kind of like do something enjoyable, and so I sort of liked the heat of it. I preferred basketball because basketball was like faster paced, and when I was doing umpiring baseball, the leagues that I was doing, if you're behind the plate and a pitcher like can't throw strikes, that is rough as an umpire, especially at like those younger ages.
Sure.
And so back then we would have like a 1 hour time limit or whatever, but like you had to be done with the inning. So I would be situational with my strike zone to make sure we could like get out. Like I think if you want to take a teenage boy or girl and turn them into an amateur meteorologist, have them umpire, because it's the only income you have, but the whole time you're just like hoping it's going to rain out so you can get out of it. Did you ever officiate?
No, I wish I would have.
No?
I'd like for Gage to do it.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah, I would recommend it. What about you? Do you ever do any youth officiating there, John?
No, but like, so on my end of it, I was big into like debate and forensics in high school, right?
Okay.
So like competitive speech, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Man, those sound effects.
I am not hearing them.
You're not.
And I think he's
I
doing
am.
it on
He does-
purpose,
it's
too.
throwing
I think
me
he's
off.
doing it on
That did
purpose.
deserve a round of
But
applause.
so in that realm, I didn't do like any like reffing or umpiring or any of that
Yeah.
stuff. After you graduate, you then are able to be a judge.
Okay.
So like all of these like debate rounds and all of these like competitive speech tournaments like have judges that are just random people from the community, right? That are like sitting here determining like who wins the round and who is like the best, I don't know.
Debater.
Right. And then like on
who
the
is the
competitive
master
speech,
debater?
right, it's like, okay, I just saw like these 10, performances and I have to rank them 1 through 10 basically.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah.
Do you like that power?
No, I don't. No, I definitely don't. Not really.
No?
Not a fan. Oh, dude. And a lot of them, it's like I'm like 19, and like these people like were just a couple of years younger than me. So it's like I don't know. I wasn't the biggest fan of it. No.
So
I think that's where the sales.
I like
was born.
competing more.
The communication, the effective communication.
Oh, dude,
skills,
I
that's
know
where
everything
the
to debate and
sales was born. I
forensics.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're smooth. I mean, last time you were on, we talked about like your voice as well and your intonation, how effective you are with that. But
Yeah.
that's
I agree. I could listen to you on this all day long. Just FYI.
That's it might become my podcast at some point.
It could.
You know, that's, yeah.
Which is fine because it takes a little bit of pressure off because this is always harder to do when I actually sit down
True.
and do it.
No,
in
that's
between the
fair.
shoots, I'm like, yeah. And then I sit down and I was like, oh, I got to figure this out. So, okay. So, couple things that thank you for coming back because you were just on an episode. And so, again, you are John and you're our boss. Mortgages have, and again, I don't want to talk about real estate or mortgages, but I find it very interesting to have this conversation with you because we touched on it a little bit when you were on last time. The business has changed a lot.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, you know, what you had described was you were basically making cold calls off of a list, right?
Correct.
And then if you had some interest from somebody, you were like doing an RV, which was
Residential visit.
yeah, so you were going out to somebody's house to sell them on pre-approving, refinance.
I would take out there a blank loan application, and we would hand fill it in with the information, the proposal that I created. So yeah, we would, John. I think you would really thrive in this model as well. It was printed sheets, like the serrated edges, like the big old printers that had like the holes on the side.
Oh, I was a finance manager at a car
he's-
dealership.
he
I know
dealt with
all
those.
about that.
They're still using that in car dealerships right now today.
So we would
Talking
we'd
my
give
language.
one sheet a day had 44 names on it, and I did this for 6 months. So I was loan officer
Right.
for 6 months in this model before they, for some reason, promoted me. But 6 months, you would call the sheet. You would have a ruler that would help you keep track of the column that you were calling. So if I'm calling
Right.
Robert Beal, I didn't want to call John's phone number, you know, because that would kill the deal right away. But credit bureau leads from TransUnion, and we would just call and introduce the idea of refinancing. So it was a refi shop. And when I look back on it now, with what we're doing today, if I had that skill set and knowledge 20 years ago, it would be a total game changer in terms of how far in advance of the thought process I would have been. Because back then it was refi shops or you went to a bank. That was it.
Okay. Okay. And so how'd you end up at the refi shop? I mean, why was it that you decided to get into mortgages?
I could not get hired on at Hallmark or AT&T
Really?
or Sprint. I interviewed at all three of them, and I don't think I did very well. So I saw an opportunity to join a brokerage, and I said, why not? And I had coached baseball for a season after I graduated college. Couldn't get hired on at a regular company that my parents said I should probably go work for, and then started that in July of 2021. I'm sorry, 2001.
2021.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, right after COVID. Yeah, July of 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you go to school for at KU?
I went there for business, majored in journalism, business communication.
It's remarkable how many journalism people are in this business.
Yeah.
You know, and I guess, you know, the communication piece of it sort of makes sense, but I talk to a lot of people with a journalism background.
I think we have 4 or 5 here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so before you, you know, I mean, what was Mike Miles going to do? 16-year-old Mike Miles, what were you aspiring to do?
Oh my gosh. I don't think I should be able to. I don't want to say what I was aspiring to do at 16. I think.
He's getting those McDonald's hash browns.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah. That's,
hash brown.
Just one. Can I get your order?
yeah.
Just one. I think that's what I came for.
Yeah. Well, you're in good shape, so I
Yeah.
can see you've always been responsible.
Yeah, just one. Yeah, you know, I think, you know, being an attorney, something in the arena of being able to convince people that what I was doing was accurate and right was something I was always interested in. Financial advising, did a lot of shadowing for that in between high school and college. So yeah, it was. I mean, when this opportunity came up, I said, why not? Because I like finance and I like talking to people. So give it a whirl. I was good at it.
And so you said that it was 6 months before you got promoted, but there was a reason you got promoted. What was the reason that led to that promotion for you?
I would like to say because they saw that I was qualified to communicate effectively, but I think it's just because I had the most loans closed in the shortest period of time in that 6 months.
Yeah.
Because everybody else there was a couple good people, but everybody else there was pretty subpar.
Yeah.
So
And I mean, John, so, okay, you know, we worked together at the Toyota store. You were a salesperson.
Yeah,
You got
this guy promoted me quick.
Yeah, I could see
Yeah,
that.
it was a pretty quick. I mean, it was different for me. I was like 6 years before I had a promotion, so I don't know why. But
Yeah.
everybody, you know, when we got to that Toyota store, it was like battlefield promotion. Everybody was like moving up very, very quickly. And so, you know, for you, when you made that transition from, you know, a salesperson on the floor into finance, I mean, how was that? How did you feel about that transition?
So I don't think I really realized like how, I don't know, like how quick it actually all happened, right?
Yeah.
Because like it was literally, you know, a year, I feel like.
Was it?
Year and a half, maybe. It was quick.
Yeah, it's
You know, and like you just kind of like, I don't know, you just kind of assume the role, you know, you just kind of do with what is given to you and make something out of it, right? And that's, I think, why I probably got that opportunity in general.
Yeah.
Because like in sales, like, you know, I wasn't necessarily doing like the standard thing where you're like going out and like taking a customer from the lot. You know, I was like, people were like, you know, doing the vehicle exchange program, the VXP.
Yeah.
And
So we had a deal
that
where
was
you would,
what we really
similar
focused
to what
on.
you were doing, where we were proactive. We would call people that were bringing their car in for service and basically sell them on the idea of, hey, let us appraise your car. Let us see if we can make. And so it was proactive in the same way that you were doing it. And yeah, John was super effective on the phone. Like we would go back, and back then we had a training program where you had to go through that business development center, and there was like 6 other guys in his deal, and then you could like listen to him talk on the phone. And so you know, those skills, you know, when you got into mortgages, you went to Zillow and doing effectively like the paid lead consumer direct type thing online.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that you would do well in that situation where you're on the phone. And so what I find is so much of this business, and just all business in general, is just how effectively you communicate. And so for you, from 6 months in a boiler room with other people, I mean, obviously that shone through.
Yeah, I think I think that was a strength, but you know, where I really got a good footing, and John, maybe you had this situation, but when I was put into a position of manager, which I had never managed anything, because I was at that point 22 years old, I was managing my peers, right? So I was on the phones next to 15 other people, and then the next day I was tasked with leading those same people. So having them look at me as a manager versus their coworker who was on the front lines with them, that was hard.
Yeah.
Because trying to drive an initiative and get them to understand things in a little way, you know, something as small as let's get people thinking on little yeses into big yeses. That took a while for them to understand that, because they were looking at me as thinking, well, I closed just as many loans as Mike did last month, so I should be in that seat, not Mike. So it took, there was a while there to fight through some of that adversity of proving myself. And I think just that mentality got me in a position of where I had to work a lot harder at communication and making sure people understood the message.
Yeah, I think on my end of things, it's almost really, really similar. But I feel like the promotion that I got going from like being a salesperson to being a finance manager, like a finance manager is kind of a different type of manager as opposed to like what like Robert was like the general sales manager. So he's like, you know, the head of the sales people basically. I feel like my position as a finance manager was more like a support staff to these salespeople, because like, you know, we're the ones trying to like get the deals done with the bank. We're the ones trying to like figure out the deal for them sense.
It's very similar to the realtor-lender relationship that we have today with the people that we work with, because the salesperson's effectively like bringing you the deal.
Right. And we got to figure out if it works or not.
Sometimes you do have it figured out. Other times that you don't, but you don't have anything unless those people figure something out and have something brought to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that the thing that I never did finance. Like I had zero interest in doing finance.
Yeah, he got a lot of flack in the car business actually for not doing finance.
And for me, you know, you go from a salesperson, you go into finance, and you go used cars, new cars. Well, we were locked down in the Volvo dealership. Finance department was like, there was no reason for me to do it. And so I bypassed it, and I struggled for a period of time with like my ego, because I was managing guys that knew more about something than I did. And you know, we sort of figured it out, but I think the challenge that I had was the fact that when I'm selling a car, you can like touch, feel, and experience it.
Right.
And, you know, when you're in finance, like you're selling air, you're selling a contract. And we talked about this in the last episode that you were on. A mortgage is like a thing that doesn't exist. You're just literally like making something out of nothing. And I, since we've had that conversation, I think about that a lot, and it's interesting because it's a different skill set than somebody selling something that you can hold, touch, and feel.
Yeah, I think that's the power of words, right? I mean, think about it. If you're reading a book, reading a script, listening to music, you know, just the imagery that those words can jump out at you. And I think that we have that opportunity in that situation where you're creating something out of nothing. You got to paint that picture.
Yeah.
Now, when I grew up in the industry, it was, here's what this financially can do for you and the freedom that can afford you and what you can do with that freedom, whether it's, you know, applying and saving a lot of money because you're paying down your term, or you can use that to, you know, go live life to its fullest and go buy some whimsical boat that you might use twice a year, but it feels good when you have it. Like, you have to illustrate that because most people can't. So
Does it have like, if it's whimsical, does it have like pinwheels on it or something?
Yeah,
or-
exactly.
it might have some shooting stars from it.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
Some unicorns.
Okay, yeah. So I think that, and that was a struggle for me when I became a loan officer, was understanding exactly like what the product was that I was actually piecing together. And so going back to, you know, when you're in the business, when you were a loan officer, you're on the phone with people, you're going into people's homes. Mm-hmm. How was that?
I enjoyed it. I thought that was extremely comfortable because you're on their turf, so they're comfortable.
Right.
You're the guest, so I think it allows you to exercise professionalism and respect right from the get-go. Because obviously, if someone comes into your house, that's your domain, and if someone's going to be disrespectful right away, you're not going to welcome them. So I think that, you know, from a skill set, naturally making them feel comfortable having somewhat of a stranger enter their household, breaking the ice in terms of just not opening up a folder and saying, okay, here's the documents that we want to go over.
Yeah.
It's, you know, breaking that ice, having a little bit of a small talk, getting them comfortable with what we're about to do, because a mortgage by itself is relatively boring, right? So we have to recreate that emotion of why we're here, what we hope to get accomplished. They're in the driver's seat. My job is to inform and empower, and I can deliver the vehicle, but they've got to be the ones that decide that they want to buy it and drive it.
Yeah.
That's the big thing about being like, you know, I've been here for the past couple of weeks, and like I've been able to, you know, be at all of my closings that have closed in the past couple of weeks. And like, that's like the most like fulfilling and like grounding kind of thing is, you know, seeing these people face to face. Cause like, let's face it, I'm not face to face with them most of the time. Right. So like being able to like sit across from the table as this like long journey is like coming to a head, and like seeing that like, you know, this stuff is important and it's like life changing to some of these people. Like,
absolutely,
it's, you know, it's just, I don't know.
No,
it really
amazing.
brings it all full circle.
Yeah,
so.
for sure. I think it's great. I love that you said that, because it's, you know, it's about the experience, right? Our vision statement is we believe in the relentless pursuit of home, right? Home is where everything starts. You have memories, you've got love, you've got tragedies, you've got all these things that happen in life, but most of it surrounds the concept of home.
Yeah.
And where do you feel most comforted when you are unsafe? You want to be at your home. So I think that being able to deliver that and see what it means to them at closing, for the most part, I think is really powerful. So that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to like show up with the box of cookies at the end. Like that's literally, you know, the thing that I get the most joy from. And I find that, you know, when you were talking about the things that you know, that it allows you to do, you know, whether it's, you know, you talked about the boat, but we didn't say this specifically, but it's the safest way to like start to build wealth, right? Sure. You know, in the U.S., it's just how it's set up. And for me personally, you know, I just love the fact that it's just the place that you get to do life. You know, I know that like you want to be strategic about it. You want to maximize each opportunity. You don't want to be, you know, you want to be a good steward of your money. I understand all of that. But for me, the thing that is exciting is the fact that like somebody's going to buy a house and now, you know, that's where they're going to raise their kids. That's, you know, when they take photos of their family, that house is like in the background, right? Sure. And so I sometimes I will sometimes struggle when I'm working with somebody who is like purely like the transactional piece of it in terms of like the dollars and cents. But that's, it's just me. I mean, I think that, going to the closing, getting to see the difference that it makes with people. The other thing is just like, the way we partner with realtors, it's like cool to like wrap up a high five and be like, hey, we got it across the line.
Sure.
So, okay. So going back to like the transition from a salesperson to management, the transition in the business, right? It's a very different business today.
Correct.
I mean, the way in which we do it, right? I mean, I've done plenty of transactions that I have never had a conversation with somebody. Like they have insisted that it's only by phone, it's only by email. There is all this technology. How do you feel like this technology do you think this technology is a good thing? Is it a balanced thing? What are your thoughts on how the business works today?
I'll give probably a pretty vanilla answer. I mean, technology is needed. I don't think it will ever replace, so when you're talking about, I don't think it'll ever replace the connection. Efficiencies, yes, sometimes it's unintended inefficiencies with the layers of financial technology that can't interpret each other. So then you need a human to interact, and I think that becomes inefficient. But for the most part, I think that automation is good. I don't like the idea of replacing a human's job with automation.
Yeah.
But the small tasks, if you can automate those are good. The big tech companies, Zillow, Rocket, what they're trying to do, ultimately it'll have a big impact on the business in a long time from now, but I don't think you can ever replace or will ever replace the power of human-to-human interaction, because you are talking about something that's emotional. No two loans are the same, so trying to communicate something to somebody through AI is going to be really, really difficult. I know that there'll be advancements to help out with some basics. So I think it's good up to a certain extent, but if we try to adopt too much of it, then you lose the connection from people to us. And when we're talking about repeat business and growing a referral business, you lose that if you're just purely focused on automation.
Yeah. And so you brought up a couple companies. You brought up Zillow and Rocket. And so you're here this evening because another friend of mine who helped, so John and my friend Bree were the kind of the impetus for me getting into the mortgage business. Okay. So she works for Zillow, and she is not here tonight because Zillow would not allow her to be on this podcast.
Okay.
And so, that is, what you've built here in Fountain. And I've said this before, in terms of my brand, in terms of the way that like I market, sometimes I'm maybe borderline absurd, but you give me a pretty long leash.
Sure.
And I think that one of the things that's neat about Fountain is the fact that really there is Fountain and there is a brand there, but the loan officers, it's like you recognize that the loan officers are their individual brands.
Right.
Well, yeah, like everyone's able to like be their own type of absurd to a certain degree, right?
Well,
it's like you've got your absurdity, we've got other people doing Instagram videos, and like I put my face on bags of coffee and hand them out to people. Like all of it to a certain degree is absurd.
Well, I mean, marketing in general is just absurd.
Right.
I mean, marketing,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
you're just going out there and being like, I'm the best. And like, you're hoping that like people interpret that, whether it's a reel, whether it's like a flyer or a billboard, that they're like, yeah, that guy's the best. So it's all sort of absurd to some degree.
Yeah, I mean the jungle law dude,
Yeah, which
made
that guy
millions
is-
and millions of dollars off of an absurd concept,
Yeah,
That-
who's got this?
Jungle Law.
I know, but Mike's got this, right?
Oh, Mike's,
Right.
yeah, exactly.
And when I first
Yeah,
started working
exactly.
here, I remember one day I was driving back up north, and there's a Jungle Law billboard, and I remember always being like, man, I can't, like, why would that ever be your attorney? But then I started thinking, as I was kind of piecing, like being more deliberate about how I built my brand, I was like, that works. That's a guy I would love to have a conversation with to understand. And you dig into it and you sort of learn like where that comes from. But as far as is that intentional? I mean, is the plan for Fountain to be Fountain, and then to have however many loan officers just going out there and being unique to the market?
Yeah, our intention always was to be the best. Right? You can't really define. We didn't really define starting out when we opened up of what the best meant. We just said we wanted to be the best. But we know for us to feel like we're the best, we have to employ the best people. And the best people want freedom. The best people want creativity. The best people want influence of what they're building. And since loan officers are out there on the front lines, connecting, developing, retaining, all that building, it's really, really difficult for us to get behind a vision that says, okay, you're going to do it exactly this way. You're going to wear this. This is the words you're going to use. Now go be successful. Right?
Yeah.
It just doesn't work in that way. So for us to be the best, we have to employ and retain the best. And in order for that to happen, people have to be fulfilled. And part of that fulfillment is being able to just know that you have an impact on what you're doing and the impact on the company. So we allow that freedom, which we're happy for.
I think it's important. So I do a podcast with Mike Niemeyer, a realtor here, and he has the phrase that he says all the time that real estate is hyper loco. It is hyper
loco. Yeah, exactly.
New energy drink. It's real estate. Real estate is hyper local, and I was both John and I were at different companies where we were licensed all throughout the country, and I'm still fortunate I have relationships with people outside of the market. But over the last year, I've really just kind of poured into the fact that I'm in Kansas City, I can literally go talk to this realtor as opposed to exchange text or whatever. And what I find is, if you look at a lot of real estate marketing online is about being local. I'm in Kansas City. I'm connected to Kansas City.
Mm-hmm.
I know the neighborhoods. I know what's going on. All of that. And I think that now that I've done this and I've spent this amount of time in Kansas City, you got to be local. You have to be in the community. And so when you talk about the different brands going out there, no two loans is the same. No two families, no two clients. We're going to be able to kind of make our connection in different ways. And I don't have a question now. I'm just making a statement. I just think it's sort of badass in a way that I didn't even give any consideration to until I was actually in it, because being a part of the city, well, there's being in the city, but there's also being of the city and of the community, because we're serving people that are our neighbors.
Right. Yeah, and I think the key word there is is serving.
Yeah.
So I think if whether that's leadership or with our client relationships or one another, we should always be serving people, in my opinion, of something. And so, you personally, Robert, I think it's cool of what you do with local businesses, whether it's coffee shops or whatever it might be, that you're really getting in tune with those local owners, because it's a great community. And I think everybody that you talk to who owns a business in Kansas City will say that they do it because they want Kansas City to thrive and prosper. Yeah. And they love the community. Right. So I think it's good that you're doing that. Yeah.
Well, I just realized, yes, I'm a W-2 employee of Fountain Mortgage, but I'm kind of like Robert Beal Inc. Really, it's I have the brand. And, so now I go through my day and I can go to this sandwich place over here, or I can go to that sandwich place over there that I know that dude's family is running that store. Right. And so I try to be much more intentional about that. But Kansas City's got a vibe, right? There's a feel to it. And I think that.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's too one of those things where, there's a lot of competition, obviously, and there's a lot of just humongous, massive companies. And what I've been thinking about throughout this conversation is, there's a group that I work with, a lot in Kansas City. And, that's, I think, why we've had so much success, is because we are so hyper local. And, in your situation where you're, competing with other offers, sellers are in Kansas City because, again, sellers are part of Kansas City. People choosing offers are a part of Kansas City. They're going to want to choose somebody that is local. And, you've got big companies trying to come in and, take some of that market share, take some of that business. And, their goal isn't to make Kansas City the best place that possibly could be. Their goal is just to get the money, get the profit, get out. Yeah. It's not you're actually a part of the community. So it's interesting.
I think it is. There's kind of a fine line there, because, you have a big company comes to Kansas City. They're still Kansas Cityans. They're still local. They're providing jobs, and opportunity to the community. And I guess that's why I think it's so remarkable that we do the business that we do, because before I came here, the idea of coming to a boutique loan company, why would you ever do that? I shop on Amazon, I do this and that. Why would you ever do that? But now that I'm here, another agent that is at a big national corporation, she brought up, well, people still just kind of want to connect, and they still want to sort of feel like they're having their hand held through the process. And, and I think that being here in the city where you can actually meet the people, I think that's important.
No, for sure. Think about, what's one of our core things as human beings that we all really strive for? Isn't it we want to feel good and have affirmation? Right?
Oh
So,
yeah, I mean, it's focus my life.
not you, Robert.
We're on your podcast right
Robert's the only
now.
one I know that
Yeah.
doesn't want that. But so when you talk about automation and technology and out of town companies, you do lose that affirmation that you can otherwise get with a connection and someone who is local that really. And I mean, the difference for us, I mean, yes, Zillow and all these other companies, they employ people who live in Kansas City. So they are certainly building jobs, and there are a lot of good companies out there. But there's a difference there in terms of being passionate about serving and giving people affirmations in what they're doing or why they shouldn't maybe do something to give them a perspective that it's all about them. It's in their best benefit, and you just lose that if you're dealing with someone who works for a large company. It's just a different type of culture.
Yeah, it is. And so, okay, so I have a note here because I've started reading or when I say reading, I've been listening to an audiobook. And I don't know if you do a lot of reading, but it's Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Have you ever read that?
Yeah, he's reading that right now.
So there is a new version of it that's like, in the digital age. And so there was something I was listening to when I was driving in, and it said, focus on it. So there's such a focus today on like immediate response, because everything's at our fingertips. We get frustrated. You send out a text, you expect a response. Focus on immediate response. We're so focused on immediate responses that we overlook meaningful responses. And so, I know you as frustratingly one of the most deliberate people that I've come across. And I mean, how do you feel like that statement? I mean, where do you see that manifesting in the mortgage business? How do you see it manifesting in the mortgage business?
I think I would hate to isolate it just to the mortgage business. I mean, I see it.
Yeah, that's fair.
I see it in, I'll give an example of my wife and I, that we could be answering each other quickly, but not engaged, and that's way less impactful than if I'm actively listening, digesting what she's saying. It may take me a minute to craft a response, but if the response is careful and deliberate and has more impact, that values her and it serves her in a way that she will feel affirmed and recognized. And then by giving that, I will receive in many other ways because she's going to reciprocate that in some way. So I don't like isolating that, immediacy and brevity to just the mortgage industry because it's just dealing with people.
Yeah.
And I think that we are very prone. We're in a deadline-based industry, so we need responses quick and we have to deliver results fast. But it's hard to convince people that doesn't have to abbreviate the meaning or the type of words that we use, whether that's to our referral partners, to our clients, or to one another. Because if we're too brief and we're focusing on that, then you lose connection, and then people start giving less cares about the situation. You start to feel less emotion about the situation, and I just think that that's dangerous when we're talking about teamwork together, trying to go for a common goal and feeling fulfilled at the end of that when you accomplish that. You mentioned going to closing, or you mentioned about, I want to give a high five and celebrate that. You want that feeling internally and externally because there's a lot of people involved with what we do to make something happen on time where it feels like it's seamless, even if it was just a total S show behind the scenes. It seemed like it was seamless. That takes a lot of people. So being deliberate and not rushing to answer something and then not rushing the answer itself, I think is really important because people can sense that.
Man, I mean, 20 years in sales, it's like speed to lead. That is a different, for me, that it kind of forced me to stop and like kind of pause because, there's oftentimes in sales, there can be such a scarcity mindset that it's just like, I gotta go. And it's not a question of urgency. It's a question of just like getting the information back out. And I feel like that made me stop to think about that because, it's not speed. It's about the quality as well. But John, what are your thoughts on that? Because you and I kind of have a similar background. I think we're both like go. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's opportunities for you to slow down? Because it's hard for me to look at that as something that would be a good thing for me.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I feel like I have a hard problem like disconnecting from it completely, like 100%. I feel like throughout the week, there's opportunities to, microdose a day off to a certain degree, to just like have like, okay, this is like a couple hours where I'm just like not going to focus on all the stuff that I need to focus on and just, take a breather basically. But I mean, that's what I struggle with all the time. I struggle all the time with being on my laptop all day long and being, not necessarily like being 100% present to, like the things I feel like I should be more present for,
Well, in terms of like the client relationship, like with you, with you, with us and our borrowers, do you think the boundaries are important?
In respect to
like this, like
my
this,
time, work-life balance, and when I can get back to you, I think it's more than fair, and I think clients, most of them, and if they don't appreciate this, then these would be the type of clients that I would question: are they the most right fit for us? So when we talk about saying no to an opportunity, that would be one of those of, is this client right and deserving of the type of service that I want to provide? And rarely does that ever happen. But if someone won't honor my boundaries, I think then the whole thing can start to break down. So if I tell a client, it's if you call me after 8 o'clock, I will respond to you by 9 a.m. tomorrow morning. I'm doing that because I want to spend time with my family, and I work hard. I'm working 50 hours a week, and 99.8% will say absolutely right on. I get it. There's really nothing that's going to be so critical it happens after 8 o'clock. But if something needs to, I'm available by text, and people will understand if they're going to be a repeat offender of that.
Yeah.
Right? But if it's once in a while, I think that's fine. But I think boundaries are really, really important, because if, John, what you're saying, microdosing time off, if we're just go all the time, whenever, then at some point something breaks. And we think right now, oh, it won't break, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But it always breaks at some point, whether it breaks because, hey, I need to take, mentally, I'm going to take a month off because I can't take it anymore. And not just our industry, but just any industry. Or I'm going to snap at somebody internally, or I'm going to snap at a client, and we're going to have an unfortunate situation, because as humans, we need to recalibrate ourselves. We need to recenter ourselves, whether that's meditation, whether that's exercise. Any of those types of things are really, really critical to just being able to rinse and repeat and come back better the next day, not just simply come back the next day and be present. So I think boundaries are really, really important. And I struggle with them personally. I'd tell people what I would like to be able to do, but I find myself breaking my own rules. So it's extremely hard. I believe in it, but it's extremely hard discipline.
Yeah. Do you think that the connectivity and access that people have today, do you think, obviously that's impacted how we kind of connect, how we respond? Do you think that fundamentally the clients are any different than they were 20 years ago when you got into the business?
No.
Or is it all okay?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's our clients are, for the most part, underserved in the information. And so it's our job to serve them in that way. Our agents, our buyers need to know the information that they're just not either aware of or comfortable knowing. So that's never changed, and that will never change. There might be more education available today online, or on an app that we didn't have when I first got in the industry 23 years ago, or 24 years ago. But they're, for the most part, the same. It's just the access to us and the access back to them is just so much faster and more available.
So I think that, when I bought my first house in 2001, I had I think the loan officer, we got under contract. I think the loan officer called and said, I think here's the rate. We're going to lock this. And it was like, okay. And that was the extent of it. And then the next house I bought, the same process, up to the point that I bought my condo, and John was like, here's the rate, and we're going to lock this. And I think about today, all of the data, all of the apps, all of the things that are out there that are like giving information it's good information, but it's not necessarily anything. Because we were talking about when you would, like, what was the process when you would lock a loan back when you were doing loans?
I had to fill out a form and fax it into whatever bank I was locking with.
Okay. And did you have like real-time rates at that time?
We would get a rate sheet fax whenever rates would change. So maybe once or twice a day, probably.
Okay. And did you have a lot of clients that were like actively shopping your rates or having a lot of like really rate focused type conversations?
No, I mean, that's that's picked up in speed and volume now, just because the information's available. I don't know that they know why rates are different.
Yeah.
They didn't know back then why rates are different, but it was less competitive at that point. But it was also, I mean, right now it's extremely competitive. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many banks, so many lenders that have come into Kansas City because of the real estate market. When I was here, it was 10% of what it is.
Yeah. And I think it's important that people be informed.
Sure.
Do you think that all of the data and the information in all of the different formats in which it's available, do you think it helps the overall experience?
Are you saying with the information that's available to them outside of our organization?
Yeah.
Like they can go.
Yeah.
I think it depends on their interaction with us. I think that if they're bringing the data, here's what I saw, what does it mean? I think that's healthy. Them, if they don't have a good way of interpreting the data and they're just left up on their own, they could end up making a bad decision because they're not looking. I mean, how many times do we see people saying, "Oh, this is a half point lower in rate," and in our heads we're thinking, "Well, it's probably got 3 points attached to it.
Yeah.
Send me the loan estimate."
Right.
And if we don't get a chance to communicate that, they'll go to closing because they didn't pay attention to the loan estimate because it's just click and sign.
Right.
They'll go to the closing and then realize, oh, well, that's new, but now we can't back out because if we do, we're out of contract and I don't want to lose the house.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Well, I think so much of this like conversation is just indicative of how much more people are squeezed nowadays, I feel like, than maybe they were like 20 years ago. Because now I feel like every single person is trying to, because they're so, squeezed month to month because, wages haven't kept up with inflation in any regard. I feel like people are so squeezed in a sense that they feel like on every single transaction and every single facet of their life, they have to figure out where can I shave the most, money possible? Where can I, kind of reverse squeeze this and save as much as possible, whether it's on a car, whether it's on a home, whether it's on, anything. I mean, that's why like Amazon came to be, right? Because like people are, wanting to save that $2 versus going to the local place and buying it for $2 more.
I think too, it comes from a natural place of with all of the information available, there just might be a natural level of distrust.
Yeah.
Situation. I mean, when I would go on to a car lot a long time ago, or if I go into, I haven't been into a department store in years, but I'd go in there, and as soon as someone would approach me, right away I threw up that wall and said, I don't need anything. I'm just here looking, which is a very natural approach because there's a level of distrust of, I don't want to be sold something. I want to buy something if I feel like it's the right value and that it fits what I'm looking for. And so I think with all of the information that's out there available, there's so much variance in it that it can create a natural barrier of distrust. And so maybe it is a combination of I'm looking to save money on the biggest liability I'll ever have in my life. But I think it's also of just questioning in general of, I don't think that that's right, so I want to ask more questions. Or I saw this over here, explain that to me.
But why is that data and that information out there in the first place? It's because,
Marketing.
whatever. And again, I think that and I felt like this when I was selling cars. I mean, your job as a husband, a wife, as an individual is to get the best deal possible that you can for your family, right? You have a responsibility to do that. So I completely understand that. But all of the data that's being pushed, all of the apps, all the advertising, all the little widgets, I mean, that's what it is. It's tied back to advertising.
Correct.
And so the motivation isn't necessarily to like provide information so people will make a good decision. It's so people will like get their eyes and sell ads. I used to see this, with like cars, for example, there'd be like Kelley Blue Book, there'd be Edmunds, and you'd see like different valuations and people would be like, well, this and this and that. And I was like, well, what are they even pushing anyway? Like, why would you even click on that website if it wasn't going to give you the value? What's the motivation for them to show you the most favorable thing? So in some ways, I think that the information, you should be informed. I want people to be informed. I want people to feel good about the decisions that they make, and the reason they work with me is because they see value there. But I do think that there's so much data out there, and back to your point, without having an understanding of how to kind of comprehend it and understand what it actually means, I think it complicates the issues in a lot of way.
Yeah.
So, John, you're going to be heading back to Mexico here. How's the visit been?
Good. It's been really good.
What have been some of the highlights?
I think number one, like I was saying, the closings, definitely just seeing, a lot of these people in person.
Went to a ball game, Royals game?
Yeah, I went to a Royals game, going tomorrow again
nice.
to a Royals game.
We have our
we're all going to have,
table
the round,
tomorrow? Oh, yeah.
the meeting of the minds.
What time is that?
2:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
It's on your calendar.
It is on your calendar.
Yeah. I have an event tomorrow. I have an influencer event.
That's
at the coffee shop.
Yeah.
Our round table is something I've been looking forward to for a long time.
Yeah. No.
This is our third installment, so it's becoming a quarterly tradition.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
All of them are we in a different quarter? Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. But what else? I mean, come on. What else? So we've got
there's just not enough hours in the day, man. So whenever I'm coming, it's just hitting the ground running.
Yeah.
So yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel bad about is I don't have enough time, and I have more people that want to see me than I can actually see, you know? So it's just not enough hours in the day.
Well, I'm glad you're here. It's always a big thing
too,
for
yeah.
me. So, okay, so I've got a couple things here, sort of that I've started doing, where I've got some kind of questions here, this or that, just to kind of get your input on how you feel about it. So, a couple questions here. Okay, mountains or beach?
Who's going first?
You.
You or me? Oh, mountains all day.
Okay.
I'm with the mountains more so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though I lived by the beach for so long, mountains are where it's at.
To me, it's sort of dependent on the beach. I think the Oregon coast would give me the best of both of those, and that's probably what I would pick 100% of the time. Okay, all right. Liquor or beer?
John, you go first on this one.
Probably beer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like You're
not a big drinker anyway.
I can't do liquor anymore.
Yeah.
No, I drink enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're cooling it at this point. Yeah. No, that's been a big thing about not being in Kansas City. I feel like there's a big culture, and maybe it is just my friends, but a big culture around drinking, and I feel like being detached from that has been really.
So you're not
nice.
just knocking back Tecates back home?
No.
Okay.
No.
Yeah. What about you?
Well, maybe your answer where you said it kind of depends on. I mean, what am I going to a party where I need to be on my game? Because if so, it's probably liquor.
Okay.
But if
on your
I'm-
game, what do you mean? That's different than throwing game, though, right?
Oh, totally different. I think if my wife likes to go to neighborhood events, which I don't necessarily enjoy. So if I'm going, then I want to be present in a way that when I get home, she's not saying, what was wrong with you all night? So I need to.
Do you pass out business cards? You let everybody know
I
what you
do.
do?
I'm sales all the time. All the
Right.
time. Yeah.
Beautiful.
I think there's a third option there, though. I think if I had to choose between liquor, beer, or wine, wine is where it's at.
Yeah, I could see John.
So
Coffee and wine.
the wine is where it's at, because I feel like, as I have not been, a raging alcoholic like I feel like I was when I was in Kansas City and in my 20s. The wine, a couple really good bottles of wine with dinner.
A couple good bottles of wine with
I
dinner?
mean, amongst 4 or 5 people, yeah,
How
right.
many people are splitting?
Yeah, exactly.
makes
It just enhances the experience so much. I don't know.
But
I
otherwise,
agree.
beer on an everyday
Yeah.
basis. I will have a beer on a nightly basis to just unwind and connect.
Yeah, as I was reading that, I would probably opt for wine as well. Okay, Royals or Chiefs?
Rose.
Really?
Yeah.
I'd say Royals, just because there's nothing like going to a Royals day game. This will make me sound like a complete nerd. Royals day game with a beer and keeping book by myself, and you cannot ever do that at a Chiefs game. It's just It's just too much of a
Too much
party.
chaos.
So-
yeah, you can be in your own little world there at the Royals game.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
it's great.
I 100%. I mean, a Chiefs game is a spectacle. It's an event. It's a day, right? And I have a great time. But I agree with you. And it's only probably been, since I turned 40 that I stopped keeping score at games. That's what
Yeah.
you're talking about, keeping
yeah.
book, right?
Yeah,
You're
keeping
not
book, right.
gambling. Okay,
Yeah.
right on. Yeah, okay. I mean,
I
did
didn't
you
realize-
find your what?
They've got like out in like left field, they've got like I didn't realize all the stats that are actually like kind of shown to you throughout the game.
Right.
Like I mean, you can see like every single pitch's like release velocity and like angle and like all that stuff out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you ever argue with any of those?
I
that was like 57-degree launch angle. That, no way.
I argue
yeah.
with like they'll say the type of pitch like a slider or sinker. I'm like, there's no way they know that fast what kind
Right,
of pitch it
yeah.
was. They're just guessing.
Yeah, unless they're logging it in the bullpen, they're
Correct.
logging what the
Right.
pitch is coming.
Yeah.
So okay, all right, but no, that's I agree with you. When I moved to Kansas City, my favorite thing to do was go to Royals games.
Yeah.
I've been on both sides of the whole pitch clock. Like I feel like in some ways it helps because you actually have like stealing, but there is something about it being the pastime and they're not. being
Yeah, I'm not a
clock,
fan of the pitch clock.
Yeah,
Not a fan, no.
Okay, so barbecue versus street tacos.
Street tacos.
I'm going barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Mike. I think that I know we're Kansas City. I know we're known for like world class barbecue. I do think we have the best barbecue, but I think the hit rate with street tacos here in certain parts of the city is way higher than the hit rate with barbecue.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, how does it stack up versus back in Pueblo?
I mean, it's phenomenal. Like we have some of the best. I think it's also just having access to like really good meat here.
Yeah,
But I mean, like San Antonio and Kansas Ave, like that barbacoa, I still have
Yeah.
not found barbacoa that's as good as that.
Yeah, it's
anywhere I've found in Mexico.
I think that no matter where I live, I'm gonna want to have access to really good meat. And on that note, I appreciate you guys spending this evening with me.
Exactly.